The Department of Homeland Security is threatening to shut down international flight processing at Newark Liberty Airport, not because of a security threat, not a crisis, but to retaliate against protesters outside an ICE detention center. A sitting U.S. senator is telling the country gas prices are going down while they're rising in every single state. Your government just spent $5 million to gold plate horse statues near the Lincoln Memorial. And the Iran conflict is starting to look less like a foreign policy doctrine and more like a midterm campaign prop, while American farmers go bankrupt at record rates. We're breaking all of it down today. If this kind of content matters to you, hit subscribe and drop a like right now. It really does make a difference. Let's get into it. Secretary Mullen went on cable news and floated using Newark's customs infrastructure as a political bargaining chip, threatening to effectively halt international arrivals to suppress protest oversight of an ICE facility. The U.S. Travel Association called it devastating. And even his own colleague, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, pushed back. The timing makes this especially reckless. Newark Liberty is the primary international gateway for the entire New York metro area. The same region hosting FIFA World Cup matches at MetLife Stadium this summer, with tens of thousands of international visitors specifically flying through this airport. Here's how the media immediately responded.
Markwayne Mullin says he's drawing up plans to stop processing international flights to Newark Airport. And the secretary made those comments following protests at Delaney Hall in Newark, an ICE facility where detainees told lawmakers they are on a hunger and a labor strike. In letters released by advocates, the detainees described overcrowded spaces where the flu is a constant problem. This week, New Jersey Senator Andy Kim was hit with pepper spray during a clash between protesters and federal agents at the facility. Here's what the senator told Chris Hayes.
We cannot give ICE billions of dollars more with no accountability when American families are getting nothing here and nothing to help them with their affordability crisis.
Important to note, Representative LaMonica McIver is currently facing 17 years in prison over allegations that she assaulted an ICE officer outside Delaney Hall last year. Senator Andy Kim better watch out. It seems like this is an administration that wants to weaponize potential oversight from members of Congress.
Well, the airline piece is...
That's crazy. Can they do that?
This is just a new level of stupid, that's all. Because what'll happen... No. Well, yes, they can. I mean, they can do that. But here's the problem. When they are sued... either by the airline, the passengers or whomever, whoever has standing, there we are, and it gets in front of a judge, you've got to have a really good rationale.
I'll fucking kill you. I'm not your whole fucking family. You will kill me. I'll kill your whole fucking family. Your whole fucking family is dead. Come on. Your children, your wife, all dead. Put it, my boy. I have your face, mother. You're dead.
Okay, so first things first, these are all ICE agents. This is not FPS, the Federal Protective Services, you know, the guys who are usually in charge of protecting buildings or in charge of pushing back against protesters. You see them all the time over in Los Angeles. They have like the dark blue with the yellow. You see them all the time at the Portland ICE facility, but we don't see any here. These are all ICE agents, and as Nick Sorter pans his camera over, and this has been another common theme throughout this entire story, there's no support or backup from the local police. This is all being handled right now by ICE agents. And
now let's talk about something every single person watching this feels every week: gas prices. Because the gap between what officials are saying and what the data actually shows is extraordinary right now. Senator Tim Scott, the chair of Senate Republicans' campaign arm, got on camera and told the country, quote, "Gas prices continue to come down, and even added that groceries would follow. That's a direct quote. Let's look at what the numbers actually say. CNN fact-checked it. On the exact day Tim Scott said prices were coming down, AAA showed they had gone up. Over the day, the week, the month, and the year. The national average is around $4.30 per gallon. 34 states are above $4. The claim and the data are simply the opposite of each other. And when the chair of the Senate Republicans Campaign Committee says it on the record, that's not a gaffe. That's coordinated messaging. Here's what the actual energy policy conversation looks like on the ground.
Jump into the cabinet meeting that took place earlier today.
Home. It's an amazing transformation. Bottom line is the center of geopolitics around energy has moved from other parts of the world to the Western Hemisphere in the last 5 months. You turn Venezuela from a sanctioned adversary into a strategic ally in 45 minutes. Never happened in history before. And what's going on in Alaska? When I was there last week in Alaska, the North Slope, 80,000 barrels a day coming online at Pica. That wouldn't have happened with you. It's up by Willow on the North Slope. That's going into the Alaska pipeline. 20% increase just off that one field. So amazing work. Energy's a high-tech industry, and those guys are crushing it, and they're loving the fact that they can provide affordable, reliable, secure energy for America.
And we're working very hard in California. You know, a lot of people don't know this, but California has tremendous oil reserves. Used to be number 3 in the nation. And the radical left has just wiped it out, and we're working very hard to get that open again and get it so the people, their gasoline prices, their lack of energy is just staggering. It's staggering. And we're actually making very good progress. Even people that were against that at one point, now they're saying, wow, that'd be great. But people don't realize it was one of the, right, Chris, it was one of the top drilling states, one of the, I would say in terms of reserves, as among the top.
Hold on to that $4.30 a gallon number. Hold on to the image of families cutting back. And now I want to tell you what your government just spent $5 million taxpayer dollars on. 4 bronze horse statues near the Lincoln Memorial. They are covering them in gold leaf, 23-karat gold leaf, on a no-bid contract, part of a $95 million DC beautification push. I understand the argument about the 250th anniversary, but there is a category of decision-making here that is almost impossible to justify to someone who's struggling to pay their bills right now. Let's look at exactly what this contract involves. Sole source. No open bidding, no competition. A 6-day market research window, and then a direct award, justified entirely by the deadline. And the gold being applied will be thicker and purer than anything these statues have received in their entire history. This is part of a $95 million makeover for Washington, D.C., while the same administration is telling the public the economy is strong. The contrast doesn't need much commentary, but it connects directly to the last story, because the people who are actually paying the price for this administration's priorities are not in Washington. They're on farms. The Iran conflict has been framed from day one as a national security imperative, but foreign policy analysts, people without partisan stakes, are increasingly making a different argument. The primary objective may not be long-term stability in the Middle East. It may be getting a deal, any deal, before the November midterms. Meanwhile, the Strait of Hormuz has been effectively closed since operations began. About half of the world's urea fertilizer moves through that strait. And American farm bankruptcies were already up 46% before any of this started. The numbers are brutal. 46% jump in farm bankruptcies before the war started. Now, add fertilizer prices spiking because the strait is closed. CNBC's reporting makes the political damage explicit. Democrats are making real inroads in Iowa, Minnesota, Nebraska. Farmers who have voted Republican their entire lives are saying they can no longer afford to defend what's happening to their bottom line. And the question sitting at the center of all of this, is there an actual coherent strategy here? Or is the administration simply trying to get to November with something that looks like a win? Here's what the analysts are saying.
Are lost. And so then the question is, does that make him more risk acceptant? Does it make him more willing to allow this war to go on and roll the dice and maybe even use ground troops? Because, one of the things so far, that has been a limitation of how badly this war is perceived as going by the Americans is 13 Americans have been killed, but no ground troops have been inserted. That could change very easily, and there are plans for that, and there are troops that are in the region for that. But Trump recognizes that they're extremely risky, and they're not being recommended by his advisors. So if he knows he's going to lose no matter what, and he knows that in the following 2 years he's going to become more of a lame duck, does that make him more risk acceptant in trying to end checks and balances against him and just throw everything at the wall? Or does he give up on that and start focusing more on monetization? He's worth $5 billion that he's made through the presidency in the last year. How about 50? How can he potentially use the remainder of his period in time to make as much money for himself and his family as humanly possible? And I'm not saying he can't do both, but I do suspect that there will be a prioritization of one or the other. And it is not
significantly in the last 5 years, while farmers' incomes have declined by 30% probably.
So kind of take me through what's going on with this event, Fed Up. Who are you going to meet with? How's it going to look like? How's it all going to work?
This is a round table that we're having here in McKinney, Texas, with about 100 growers. We're speaking with the chair of the FTC and some of his staff to talk over the concerns and the problems we see in our supply chains, specifically with fertilizer, and how we think there could be some significant improvements.
There's a lot of misconceptions here. Most people may think at home, that why don't farmers just charge more for their crops to cover the higher cost of, let's say, fertilizer? But it doesn't actually work that way. In many cases, you have to eat those costs, right?
That's very true. Yeah, we're commodity producers. The value of our production is determined on the CBOT each day or each week. And those values are influenced by global supply and demand numbers. We don't have any control over that. So, currently there's a significant excess supply of corn and soybeans. China's backed away from buying a lot of U.S. grain, so it's made it really tough for us.
So what can the government step in to help you at this point? At this roundtable meeting, what are you going to say? What are you going to ask for? What steps do you want taken?
We want to open up our supply chain so we have more options for our inputs. Right now, we only have 1 or 2 suppliers for phosphate, 1 or 2 suppliers for
DHS using airport chaos as a political weapon, right before the World Cup brings the world to our doorstep. Gas prices rising while officials publicly claim otherwise. $5 million on gold horse statues during a national affordability crisis. And a war whose timeline increasingly looks like it's being managed around an election calendar, while American farmers pay for it with their livelihoods. These aren't separate news items. This is a pattern, and the only way to push back on it is to stay informed and keep talking about it. If you want more content like this, subscribe, hit the bell, and share this with someone who needs to see it. I'll see you in the next one.